Welcome to Nucleus, the podcast covering America's top leaders in business and culture. I'm your host, Tripwire. Today on the show, the stunning story of how one podcaster secured what may be the most lucrative media contract in history, transforming the industry overnight with a deal that reaches 9 figures. Joe Rogan just re-signed with Spotify in a deal reportedly worth up to $250 million. And here's the kicker. This time, the show's going back to being available on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. After 4 years of platform exclusivity that sparked endless debates about content moderation and audience accessibility, Rogan's negotiating his way into having the biggest bag in podcasting while getting his distribution freedom back. The move signals something critical about the creator economy. When you own your content and build real audience loyalty, you don't have to choose between money and control. You can engineer deals where you get both. To understand how Rogan built this kind of leverage, you've got to go back to a closet in his house in 2009. And yeah, I mean an actual closet. The Joe Rogan experience started as the definition of not giving a damn about business strategy. Rogan was already successful. He'd made Fear Factor money. He was commentating for the UFC, touring as a comedian. The podcast was just him and his buddy Brian Redban setting up some microphones and talking about whatever. Martial arts, comedy, conspiracy theories, sometimes while getting high. No script, no time limit, no advertisers to please. Episodes would run 2-3 hours. In an era when everyone said online content needed to be snackable and under 10 minutes, Rogan was serving up full-course meals. The format shouldn't have worked. Traditional media wisdom said audiences had short attention spans. Advertisers wanted clean, brand-safe content. Networks wanted editorial control. Rogan ignored all of it. He just made the show he'd want to listen to, which turned out to be exactly what millions of other people wanted too. But here's what's interesting about Rogan's background. He's not just some podcaster who got lucky. He's a legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He spent years grinding through the Boston comedy scene. He worked construction and drove limos to pay bills. When the UFC hired him as a commentator in the late 90s, he initially worked for free because he loved mixed martial arts and wanted to help grow the sport. That's not a guy optimizing for short-term cash. That's someone building expertise and credibility in spaces he cares about, trusting it'll pay off eventually. And it did. As the UFC exploded from fringe sport to multi-billion-dollar property, Rogan became the authoritative voice of MMA. When he talked about fighting technique or interviewed fighters, he had practitioner credibility. He wasn't a talking head reading a teleprompter. He'd actually been in the cage, trained with world-class grapplers, understood the craft. That authenticity became his signature move, always positioning himself as genuinely curious and knowledgeable, through experience, not credentials. The podcast grew steadily through the early 2010s, but the real inflection point came when Rogan started booking guests beyond his comedy buddies, scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, alternative historians like Graham Hancock, eventually Elon Musk, who smoked weed on air and generated massive mainstream media attention. Then Bernie Sanders during his presidential campaign. Each guest brought their own audience. Each conversation demonstrated you could go deep on complex topics without dumbing anything down.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners. Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
By 2015, the show was reaching millions per episode, outpacing many traditional media outlets. And that's when the offers started rolling in. Networks wanted to bring him into their ecosystem. Platforms wanted exclusivity. Rogan kept saying no. He'd rather make less money and maintain complete creative control than get rich while someone else called the shots. He'd already done that with Fear Factor. Made the money, hated the lack of autonomy. Learned the lesson. This is where Rogan's strategy gets really interesting. While he was turning down deals, he was investing in infrastructure. He built a professional studio in Woodland Hills with high-end equipment. He replaced his original producer with young Jamie Vernon, who brought technical excellence without ego. He created a consistent brand aesthetic. He was building enterprise value while maintaining independence. Then, in 2020, Spotify offered him something different. Reportedly 100 to 200 million for multi-year exclusive licensing. But, and this is crucial, Rogan kept ownership of the content. Spotify got licensing rights, not ownership. He could walk away eventually with his entire catalog. And he negotiated creative control protections. It was the first time he'd accepted platform exclusivity, but he structured it so he wasn't trapped. The Spotify years were rocky. Some longtime fans hated the platform switch. Controversies erupted over certain discussions, with doctors and musicians demanding Spotify drop him. Past problematic comments surfaced, forcing a public apology. Spotify reportedly removed dozens of episodes. But here's what didn't happen. Spotify didn't cancel the deal. Because Rogan's audience loyalty was so strong that even with the controversies, he was driving massive subscriber value. And now, with this new deal, he's negotiated his way back to multi-platform distribution, while presumably getting an even bigger check. That's not luck. That's understanding your leverage and using it strategically. So what can we actually learn from how Rogan built this? 3 specific principles stand out. First lesson, independence creates option value. Rogan spent the entire 2010s turning down lucrative offers to maintain control. Every network deal he rejected felt like leaving money on the table. But what he was actually doing was building what negotiation theory calls a strong BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. His alternative was continue successfully on my own terms, which meant when he finally did sign a deal, he negotiated from strength, not desperation. The business application here is broader than podcasting. Whether you're a consultant building a client base, a startup choosing investors, or a professional building your career, maintaining alternatives gives you negotiating power. The short-term money you pass up early can create exponential returns later if it preserves your independence. Second lesson, own the customer relationship, not just the product. Rogan didn't just create content. He built direct connections with his audience through email lists, social media, live streaming, consistent engagement. When he moved to Spotify, the audience followed because the relationship was with him, not the platform. Compare this to creators who build entirely on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. They're generating value, but the platform owns the relationship. If the algorithm changes or the platform bans them, they're starting from zero. Rogan's audience would follow him to any platform because he owned the connection. This is why every business book emphasizes the same thing: own your distribution and customer data. Platforms are valuable for reach, but dependency on them is dangerous. Build your own channels, even while using theirs. Third lesson, authenticity is a moat. Rogan's competitive advantage isn't production quality or exclusive content. It's that he genuinely seems like himself. He'll admit when he doesn't know something. He'll change his mind mid-conversation. He'll ask questions that sound dumb, but cut to the core of an issue. Corporate competitors can't replicate this because authentic curiosity can't be manufactured by committee. When a network tries to create the next Joe Rogan, they hire someone to perform curiosity, which audiences can smell immediately. The business insight here connects to research on authenticity as competitive advantage. In markets where consumers have infinite options, tangible differentiation based on authentic perspective becomes incredibly valuable. You can't fake authenticity at scale. That's why it works as a moat. The framework connecting all this is what business strategists call blue ocean strategy. Instead of competing in the existing media market, network TV, cable news, traditional radio, Rogan created entirely new market space, long-form video podcasting, with unedited conversations wasn't a category anyone was fighting over. He made competition irrelevant by doing something so different that direct comparison became difficult. When competitors finally tried to copy the format, he already had years of relationship building, content library, and audience loyalty. First mover advantage plus authentic differentiation equals defensible market position. Let's distill this into quick takeaways. What can you actually do with these insights? 3 things. First, calculate the option value of independence before taking any deal that constrains your future choices. Sometimes the best move is staying patient and building leverage. Second, invest in owning your customer relationships directly, even when platforms offer easier distribution. Build your email list, your community, your direct channels. Third, lean into whatever makes you authentically different, rather than trying to compete on conventional terms. Your weird is your moat. The bottom line? Rogan's $250 million deals aren't about being the best interviewer or having the best production. They're about understanding that in the creator economy, owning your content, your audience relationships, and your authentic perspective creates compounding value that eventually becomes impossible for platforms to ignore. He didn't build a podcast. He built leverage. And in business, leverage is the only thing that really matters. Thank you for listening to Nucleus. You can show our podcast team some love with 5 stars and a follow. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grab news. Thomas.